Let me tell you what happens when you finally see through someone's mask. It's not just about catching them in a lie or spotting an inconsistency in their story. No. It's about that moment when all their carefully constructed layers start peeling away and they realize they can't fool you anymore. That's when the real show begins. They panic, not because you caught them in one lie, but because you've developed the ability to see through all their lies. Their entire world of manipulation starts crumbling because their favorite puppet has learned to see the strings. These masters of deception have spent years perfecting their performance. They've learned exactly when to smile, when to act hurt, when to play the victim. They know precisely how to make others feel guilty for questioning them. But now you've done something unforgivable. You've learned to read their script before they perform it. You can predict their next move because you've studied their playbook. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than someone who can anticipate their tactics. It's like their weapon has been turned against them, and suddenly, they're the ones feeling exposed and vulnerable. Watch how they react when you start calling out their patterns. First comes the denial. Strong, aggressive, almost believable. They'll tell you you're imagining things, that you're being paranoid, that you're the one with the problem. Then comes the rage, when they realize their denial isn't working anymore. They'll try to turn others against you, spread rumors, paint you as the unstable one. But here's what's really happening. Every accusation they throw at you is actually a confession. They're telling you exactly who they are, hoping you'll get overwhelmed and back down. But you're not backing down anymore, are you? The most fascinating part is watching their control start slipping. These people are used to being the puppet masters, pulling everyone's strings from behind the scenes. But now, someone in their audience has spotted the strings. And worse, they're pointing them out to others. That's when the real panic sets in. They realize they're losing their power, their influence, their carefully crafted image. Everything they've built is at risk because one person, you, refused to keep playing by their rules. And that's when they become truly dangerous, because a cornered manipulator will do anything to regain control. Now they're scrambling to maintain their facade, but it's too late. You've seen how they switch personalities, depending on who's watching. You've noticed how their stories don't quite add up, how their excuses always make them the hero or the victim, never the villain. They're like a magician whose tricks have been exposed. Once you know how the illusion works, you can't unsee it. And what's worse for them, you're not just seeing through their current tricks, you're remembering all the times they fooled you before. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, every fake apology is coming back with perfect clarity. The desperation in their eyes when they realize their usual tactics aren't working anymore, that's pure terror. They'll try everything. Love bombing, guilt tripping, threatening, pleading. They'll promise to change, swear they'll be different, beg for another chance. But you see it now, how they switch between these tactics like flipping through channels, trying to find the one that still works on you. But none of them work anymore, because you've learned to see the actor behind all these roles they play. You've discovered that their emotions are just tools they use to get what they want. Their entire world revolves around maintaining different versions of themselves for different people. They're one person with their family, another with their friends, another at work, and something else entirely behind closed doors. But you've become dangerous because you can see all these versions at once. You're like someone who's watched the same movie so many times they can spot every edit, every special effect, every camera trick. Their movie isn't entertaining anymore. It's just obvious manipulation, and they know it. Look at how they start to unravel when they realize they've lost their power over you. Everything they've built their identity around, their ability to charm, to manipulate, to control, suddenly becomes useless against someone who can see through it all. That's when their true self starts leaking out around the edges. The rage they've always hidden, the insecurities they've covered up, the emptiness they've tried to fill by controlling others. It all comes spilling out. And there's nothing they can do to stop it, because you've already seen too much. The really delicious part is watching them try to discredit you before you can expose them to others. They'll tell everyone you're crazy, unstable, vindictive. Truth is a funny thing when it finally breaks free. These people have spent years building walls of lies, creating perfect little stories about who they are, carefully constructing an image that everyone would love and trust. But when that mask starts cracking, truth doesn't just leak out, it explodes. Every lie they've ever told starts unraveling all at once. And suddenly, they're standing there, naked and exposed, watching as their carefully constructed reality crumbles around them. That's true terror, not the fear of being caught in one lie, but the horror of watching your entire false identity dissolve. The really interesting part is what happens to their relationships once people start seeing who they really are. All those connections they built while wearing their mask, they start falling apart. Because nobody was actually friends with them. They were friends with the character they created. It's like watching a house of mirrors shatter. Suddenly everyone can see that the person they trusted, admired, maybe even loved, never actually existed. And the real person, underneath, they're a stranger who's been watching, studying, and manipulating everyone around them. Now they're facing their worst nightmare, being seen for who they really are. These people built their entire lives on other people's perceptions. They measured their worth by how well they could fool others, how perfectly they could maintain their facade. But now that the truth is out, they're discovering something terrifying. They don't know who they are without their mask. They've spent so long pretending to be different people for different audiences that they've lost touch with their own reality. And that emptiness, that's what really terrifies them. Watch how they start questioning everything once their deception is exposed. Every relationship, every achievement, every moment of connection, was any of it real? Did anyone ever actually care about them? Or did they only care about the illusion? The truth starts poisoning their memories, making them realize that every meaningful moment in their life might have been built on lies. They're not just losing their mask, they're losing their entire history, their whole sense of self. And there's nothing more terrifying than realizing you've become a stranger to yourself. The panic really sets in when they realize they can't put the mask back on. Once people have seen behind it, no amount of manipulation or performance can make them unsee it. These master manipulators suddenly find themselves powerless because their greatest weapon, deception, has become useless. They're like a snake without its venom, still trying to strike, but knowing their bite has no power anymore. Every attempt to regain control just makes them look more desperate, more transparent, more obviously fake. Most fascinating is watching them try to maintain their other relationships while one part of their facade crumbles. They become paranoid, wondering who else might see through them. Every interaction becomes a test. every conversation a potential threat. They start making mistakes, letting their mask slip in moments of stress, showing flashes of their true self to people who aren't ready to see it. It's like watching someone try to plug holes in a dam that's already breaking. Each fix just creates pressure somewhere else until the whole thing finally bursts. The collapse of their facade reveals something they've been running from their whole lives, their own emptiness. Without their masks, without their carefully crafted personalities, they're forced to face what's left. And often, there's not much there. They've spent so long being whatever other people needed them to be that they've forgotten how to just be. That's the real reason they're terrified. Not because you exposed them to others, but because you forced them to see themselves. Their world becomes a minefield of potential exposures. Every old lie might resurface. Every past manipulation might come to light. They start seeing threats everywhere, in casual conversations, in old photos, in innocent questions. Their life becomes an exhausting game of damage control, trying to maintain what's left of their facade, while knowing it's only a matter of time before more truth emerges. It's like watching someone trying to hold smoke in their hands. The harder they grip, the more it slips away. These master manipulators suddenly find themselves trapped in a nightmare of their own making. Every lie they told, every story they invented, every fake personality they created, it's all coming back to haunt them. But here's what makes it truly terrifying for them. They're discovering that the truth doesn't need their permission to emerge. Once it starts breathing, once it tastes freedom, it takes on a life of its own. Their lies become obvious, their manipulations transparent, their true nature impossible to hide. Here's the beautiful thing about truth. It doesn't need to attack, it just needs to exist. These people, they're running around blaming you for their destruction, pointing fingers, calling you a monster for exposing them. But you didn't plant those lies. You didn't create those fake personalities. You didn't build that house of cards they called a life. All you did was refuse to keep playing along, and their whole world started falling apart. They're the architects of their own destruction. You just stopped being their accomplice. They never understood that every lie they told was another crack in their foundation. Each fake smile, each manipulated story, each crafted personality. They thought they were building something stronger, but they were just adding more weight to a structure that was already breaking. Now, they're watching it all collapse, and they want to blame you. But you didn't set the explosive. You just pointed out what was already burning. Their life was a time bomb from the moment they chose deception over truth. The really pathetic part is watching them try to rebuild using the same broken materials. They're still reaching for their old tricks, still trying to manipulate, still thinking they can fix this with more lies. But you can't patch up a sinking ship with the same holes that made it sink. Every attempt to regain control just highlights how little control they actually had. They're like architects trying to fix a collapsing building by adding more weight to it, not realizing that their entire approach to construction was flawed from the start. Look at how they scramble to salvage what's left of their fake life. They'll throw anyone under the bus, betray any confidence, break any promise, all in a desperate attempt to maintain some fragment of their crumbling facade. But here's what they don't get. The very actions they're taking to save themselves are just proving everyone right about who they really are. Every desperate move, every attempt to shift blame, every manipulation tactic they use just confirms what people are finally seeing, that they've always been exactly who you said they were. These master manipulators never realized that they were building their entire existence on quicksand. Every relationship was conditional. Every connection was strategic. Every interaction was a performance. They created a life that could only survive in perfect conditions, where nobody questioned too deeply, where nobody looked too closely, where nobody demanded authenticity. But life doesn't work that way. The truth always finds its way in, and anything built on lies will eventually suffocate under the weight of reality. Now they're learning the hardest lesson, that authenticity isn't just some cute buzzword. It's the only foundation strong enough to survive reality. Everything else, it's temporary. All those perfectly crafted lies, all those strategic manipulations, all those fake personalities. They were building a palace out of paper. And now that the rain has come, they're standing in the middle of their soggy kingdom, wondering why nothing they built could last. But you didn't bring the rain. You just refused to pretend it wasn't getting wet. The real comedy in all this is how they still think they can fix it. They're running around trying to patch up their reputation, trying to salvage relationships, trying to maintain some semblance of their former power. But they're using the same broken tools that got them here in the first place. More lies, more manipulation, more fake apologies and empty promises. They don't understand that they're not just losing control. They're losing the very ability to control. Because once people see through you, no amount of performance can make them unsee it. Watch their desperate attempts to rewrite history now that everything's falling apart. They'll try to convince everyone that they were misunderstood, that their intentions were pure, that they were actually the victims all along. But their revisionist history isn't working anymore because people finally see the pattern. Every story they tell, every excuse they make, every justification they offer just reinforces what everyone now knows, that their entire life was built on a foundation of lies too fragile to survive exposure to truth. Most fascinating is how their own choices become their prison. Every lie they told, every relationship they manipulated, every truth they buried, it's all coming back to trap them. They built this cage themselves, bar by bar, lie by lie, manipulation by manipulation. And now that they're locked inside it, they want to blame you for closing the door. But you didn't design this prison. You didn't force them to live a life so fragile that the truth could shatter it. They did that all on their own, one deception at a time. Want to know what really drives them insane? It's not the exposure, it's the withdrawal. Every fake smile, every manufactured moment, every scrap of attention they collected, it was all just another hit of their favorite drug. Social validation. They're addicts, you see, and you just cut off their supply. No more easy fixes. No more instant gratification from their perfectly curated lies. Now they're shaking, desperate, watching their audience slip away while their hands grasp at empty air. The thing about validation junkies, they built their entire existence on other people's reactions. Morning, noon, night, performing, adjusting, calculating every move like some deranged chess player. But the game's changed now. The pieces don't move like they used to. One wrong step, one tiny crack in their performance, and everything starts crumbling. That's when the real fun begins. Tick-tock, tick-tock. counting likes, counting comments, counting every scrap of attention like it's precious gold. Pathetic, isn't it? But here's what makes me laugh. The harder they try to hold on to their audience now, the faster people run away. It's like watching someone try to grab smoke with bloody hands. The more they squeeze, the more it slips through their fingers. Oh, but the desperation. That's the real show. See them scrambling to maintain their image across different groups. It used to be so easy. Different masks for different crowds, different stories for different ears. But now, their worlds are colliding. Stories don't match up. Lies contradict each other. And they're standing in the middle of it all, trying to keep their stories straight while everything burns around them. Remember how they used to walk into a room and instantly become whatever everyone needed? The perfect friend, the wounded victim, the wise advisor, changing faces faster than cards in a rigged deck. But exposure changed the game. Now people see the cards up their sleeve, the mirrors in their hands, the strings they used to pull. And nobody's placing bets on their performance anymore. The panic starts small, a missed like here, an unanswered message there. But it grows, spreads. Suddenly their social media posts sit there, gathering dust instead of praise. Their dramatic stories meet silence instead of sympathy. The validation well runs dry, and that's when the real madness begins. They start overcompensating, reaching out desperately, doing anything to get that fix of approval they need to feel real. Funny thing about empty vessels, they make the most noise when they're cracking. These people never built anything inside themselves. Everything was external, borrowed, stolen from the reactions of others. Now that the validation's drying up, you can hear them rattling. Hollow, breaking. Each desperate attempt to regain control just shows how little control they ever had. But here's the real kicker. They can't stop performing. Even when it's obviously not working. Even when everyone sees through the act. They keep dancing their little dance. It's all they know. Like a street performer continuing their routine while the crowd walks away. The show must go on, right? Even if no one's watching anymore. Even if every movement just exposes more of their lies. The terror in their eyes when they realize they can't start fresh somewhere else. That's pure poetry. Used to be they could just move on, find new audiences, new sources of validation when the old ones dried up. Not anymore. Word spreads. Reputations follow. Each new attempt to build their house of cards fails faster than the last. The walls are closing in, and there's nowhere left to run. The really twisted part. Deep down, they knew this day was coming. Every morning putting on their masks. Every night rehearsing their lies. Every moment spent juggling different versions of themselves. They felt the clock ticking. That nagging voice in their head whispering, one day, they'll see through you. And now that day has arrived. No more rehearsals. No more practice runs. The curtain's been ripped away, and they're standing there, script in hand, realizing they never learned how to be real. Imagine building your entire existence on quicksand, then being surprised when you start sinking. Each lie they told, each performance they gave, each scrap of validation they collected. It was all just more weight, dragging them down. Now they're thrashing around, reaching for anything solid, but everything they grab is just as fake as they are. In the end, what destroys them isn't the exposure, it's their own addiction to the lie. They'll keep chasing that high, keep searching for that validation fix, long after it's gone. Because without their audience, without their constant stream of approval and attention, they don't exist. They never did. They're just empty costumes falling to the floor, with no one left to wear them. And that's the joke they never saw coming.